Let's put the spindle turning skills we've been building to the test with these candlestick holders. We will be creating much more detailed shapes with more precise measurements. So let's get started.
Welcome to Turning Stitches, I'm Sean. We help wood turners learn the craft to begin making fun projects faster. Let's keep building on your spindle turning skills after making a mallet and a garden dibble. If you missed making a garden dibble in lesson 5, you can find it right up here. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you can easily follow along with this series of lessons. Candlestick holders are a great home decor piece to help show off your wood turning skills. Today we'll be making a pair of candlestick holders for taper candles. My blank is roughly 2 inches by 2 inches and 12 inches long. Your blank can be a little bit different depending on the material you've got in your shop, but we'll start by creating a cylinder out of this just like we did in lesson 1. Today I'm letting the speed rip a little bit at 1500 RPMs and we'll be back with a cylinder. With our cylinder ready, let's create a tenon here at the tailstock end for drilling here on the lathe with our 4-jaw chuck later on. If you don't have a 4-jaw chuck, you can skip this step. And then once we have the tenon in place, we'll flip the workpiece end to end. So I had a question that came up in the comments section in lesson 1 about this little handle on the top of the tailstock. And what that handle does is it allows us, as we advance the quill, and now we've got pressure here, this just kind of locks down the quill and this tailstock, and it keeps it from backing out while we're turning. The design we're working with today is a reproduction of this candlestick holder we had here in the house. It's got a lot of neat features, so I thought it'd be fun to include here in this project. We've got a lot of measurements in this project, so creating a story stick will probably be helpful. You can pause the video right here and kind of see how I've got this laid out. And I'll make sure you've got all the measurements with this as well. So our first mark, we're going to come in from the tailstock. We're going to come in 1/4 of an inch. And then also from the tailstock end, we're going to come in 1 1/4 inches. Then from there, we've got 2 lines that are 1/2 inch apart, one here and one here. And then measuring from, once again, from the tailstock end, we're coming in 3 inches. This is going to be the minor, kind of the smaller diameter of our taper. And then the wide part of our taper, measuring from the tailstock again, is 6 inches. So this mark will be the widest part of our taper. That's our major diameter, and it's going to be 1 5/8 inches. And from this point, our next line, the 7th line, is going to be 1 inch down 1 1/8 inches. And then from here, we're going to measure 5/8 of an inch. And then from this mark, 3/4 of an inch. Then also from here, we're going to go 1/4. And then the last line is the base or the bottom of the candlestick holder. Measuring from the tailstock to here is 9 inches. So from the tailstock end, we need to start working the diameter down a little bit. So we know our widest points up here at the top, where the candle will be here at this midpoint in the taper. We know that wide spot is going to be about 1 5/8 inches. So I've got my caliper dialed in pretty close to that diameter. So we just need to work this down to about 1 5/8 inches. And we're going to come down to this line down here. And from here to the end, we'll work this portion down to 1 5/8 inches. You can use your skew chisel. We can also use a spindle gouge or even a spindle roughing gouge. So take your pick here, and we'll just kind of work this diameter down to 1 5/8 inches, and then we'll pick up the details from there. If you're getting value out of the video so far, hit that like button. Now with this reduced down, let's put our marks back on the piece. Now we'll start establishing some of our critical elements. We're going to start with our parting tool, and we're going to part in here at the 2nd line and the 3rd line. We're going to part down to about 3/4 of an inch. And we're going to go on basically the lower side of this line and the top side of this line. So this whole section here will probably end up being at about that 3/4 inch diameter. And then also the fourth line, we're going to do the same thing. So let's get that done. Now we're going to put a V-notch here at our minor diameter and our major diameter, and that'll just help us keep these locations intact. I just want to skim this one. I don't really want much there, but that'll just keep that line intact. From the tailstock end, let's begin shaping. Up here at the top, we want to create a tulip or flower shape. So we're going to come in here at this line, come in with a slight cove, and then we're going to roll a bead down into this minor diameter where we're going to have a fillet. So let's get that working. Right up here at the top, we're just going to roll that edge, round off that edge. Just a little bit. And then we're going to round this edge into that cove. Okay, as we work down the top on this next section, we're going to work this diameter down. We're ultimately going to have a bead right here. So let's just shrink that down because we're going to work down to those fillets, which are quite a bit way down there. So I just want to work this down. Now essentially what we've got here in this flat spot, we've really got two different fillets. So what I want to do is come in here with a really tight cove right in between these two locations. So I'm going to mark that with a pencil here real quick. So basically here and here, in between those lines, we're going to make a very narrow cove. We're going to eliminate quite a bit of the shoulders as we do that. Okay, then I'm just going to fix the shape of my bead right here, right down into that fillet, right down into that one. With most of our shaping done up here at the top, we want to work on the taper, which is this section in here. We're going to start with a parting cut, just to start working down where our minor diameter is. Ultimately, we want that to be about 5/8 of an inch. So let's work that down, and then we'll start working these shoulders off to meet that point. We're not all the way down to the diameter where we want to be yet, but we're just going to work this material off. This is basically just all waste material. So I'm just kind of bringing it in like a cove shape. All right, I've got my story stick back out because I want to reestablish this line. I want to know where I want that narrowest part to be, which is right there. I know I want that to be 5/8. We're about 3/4 here.
Now we'll work just below that bead down into the minor diameter on our taper.
So now we just want to work our wide diameter down into it, and then we'll work back toward the base. Okay, now it's time to start shaping the base, and we're going to start with a fillet right here on this line. So we're going to come right on this side of this line here, put a fillet down to 3/4 of an inch, so it'll be very similar to these that we did up here at the top. And then on this next line, we'll have another fillet, but this one will only be about we'll leave the diameter at about 1 inch. So let's get those cut. So with these points established, we're going to roll this in and kind of finish off our taper. Right here, we're going to end up making a cove in between these two fillets. So we'll work this material down here also. That way it'll give us some space as we're working on the bottom side of the taper. So now we're just going to roll a bead very gradually from this high point down into the bottom of that fillet. So let's start over here on this edge, just start working away the waste material. And we'll kind of keep working back toward our line to our widest point as we go along. Here we're going to cut a cove, kind of like we did up here, very narrow, in between these two fillets. But up here on this top side, we're going to use some of the material on that fillet in our cove. But we're going to create a cove down from this spot into this spot. I'm going to work away some of this material. Just create some space. I'll work that down. Start working my cove. Just like any cove, we want to work from high to low, down into the bottom. So now let's work on the base. Basically just going to come in here with V-notches on all three of these lines. A little deeper down here, this is going to be the bottom. So we'll end up parting it off below this line. So let's get that started, and then basically we're just going to roll beads and kind of stair step down. It's going to be widest here, so we'll step down and then step down again. We're going to have a decent sized shoulder. The shoulder is going to be relatively close to this diameter right here as it rolls into this fillet here. So we'll bring this down to the diameter we want, and then we'll roll into that fillet. I'm going to work backwards into the V-notch a little bit. Let's check our diameter here. Almost there. So here we're just going to start rolling that bead right into there. And then we're going to roll a bead here. I'm going to take my skew chisel and just kind of refine that edge right there just a little bit. And we're just going to roll over right there. Now it's time to start sanding. Make sure you've got a good dust mask or a respirator or something. So let's get that on and get this going. We're going to work through the grits here on this one from 100 grit, 150, then up to 220. With our sanding done, now it's time to drill a hole in the top for a candlestick. I like to use these little metal tapered cups because all we have to do is drill a hole and drop it down in there, and then it'll hold that candlestick very securely. Now today we're going to use the 4-jaw scroll chuck, and this is really the first appearance for the scroll chuck in the series of lessons. If you don't have a scroll chuck, we can drill this with a drill press, or even by hand if we're really careful. We still need the 7/8 inch hole, but I'm going to use it. Earlier, one of our first steps was to put a little dovetail tenon down here on the end, and that's what we're going to use to kind of grip our workpiece to drill this hole. Now, I do have the speed. When I'm drilling, I want the speed to be down pretty low. I'm going to be running about 300 RPMs, so that's nice and tight. Down here in the tailstock, I've got a drill chuck in place of the live center, and I've also got my 7/8 inch Forstner bit already installed. I've got a mark here at 3/4 of an inch from the end, so I've got my depth marked on the drill bit. So all we're going to do is kick this on. It'll be about 300 RPMs, and we're just going to drill this out very slowly. Should grab right in the middle. Check to make sure this cup goes in there. Yep, perfect. With the hole for our candlestick drilled, all we have left to do is part this off. I've kicked the lathe speed back up. I've got a jam chuck holding the top. So we'll just kick this on and part this down most of the way, and then finish it up with a handsaw. Keep practicing. With our candlestick holder finished, if you've got another blank in the shop, make another one. And of course, the challenge is trying to make them look the same. In our next lesson, we're going to start faceplate turning. It'd be great if you've got a couple boards that are 1.5 inches thick, one that's 3 inches by 3 inches square, the other one 5 inches by 5 inches square. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you'll see when that video comes out, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next lesson.